should be working. Brilliant. There we are. Okay, well, welcome to our fourth exhibition, artist talk. I'm Daniel Staveley from Elysium Gallery. I set up the SBI Photography Award 8 years ago. So we have lots of photographers there who've been in and been judging the work for us. 2019 was the last one we did. We had 2 Russian photographers won the prize, and now people want to come in. And then Jessie was part of that exhibition then, so I thought I'd grab her in to talk to you all. We basically set up in Elysium, we set up the Basement Collective. So it was a group of Swansea-based and Carmarthen-based artists, so from the southwest Wales there. And we just wanted to make an organisation that would just support each other, really. I mean, all the photographers most of them were graduates or about to graduate. And obviously, you know, it's nice to have that support network when you leave. Elysium has always dealt with artists on the first rung of their ladder. We give a lot of exhibition opportunities to up-and-coming artists, so that's something that we wanted to carry on. The same as obviously offering we got 83 studios that we run in Swansea as well. So that's all different levels then, so people can engage with the studio system where they want. But the whole thing then was to build a community, keep people talking, keep people inspiring each other, and just making it as good as possible then. So the Basement Collective came out of that. And then we were all forced online with COVID. We all retreated to our houses. So we basically started this conversation in there. I'd like to thank, obviously, Elysium Gallery for allowing this to happen. Also, I'd like to thank the Arts Council of Wales. We received a stabilisation grant, which allowed us then to pay for the studios. So we gave the 83 artists their free studio spaces up until December to keep them working. But it also gave us money then, obviously, to run these kind of activities, throw a bit of money back towards the artists. So just like to thank, obviously, Elysium for that, and then the Arts Council of Wales. That's about it, really. I've got with us today then Jessie Edwards-Thomas. So she's up there in the top left-hand corner. Well, my top left-hand corner anyway. I don't know where she is with you guys. So Jessie was a visual artist based in Britain. She originates from Snowdonia, so up there in North Wales. Her artistic practice explores the individual through gender, mental health, and the individual's placement within society. Jessie's work focuses on the individual's need for belonging within the constructs of society. She was obviously shortlisted for the SBI Award in 2019, and then had the prints in the exhibition. And they were absolutely beautiful black and white prints, I must admit.
Thank you.
She did apologise for not picking them up, but I should apologise for not reminding her, because I actually want to keep hold of the prints if they're so good. So that's kind of my fault as well. I've kind of, accidentally on purpose not reminded you then. So
might have to leave one there for you then.
Yeah. So obviously, Jessie's been exhibiting all over the place. You can look online for her CV. She's had work recently in Oriel Mostyn, and then the Martin Parr Foundation and the exhibition in the Arnold Feeney. She teaches in Cheltenham and in Bristol, so she's very busy. And earlier this year, she was nominated for the Most Inspiring Teacher. So I think we've got to give her a round of applause for that. And I'm sure Bristol and Cheltenham are lucky to have her on board then. So without further ado, and me talking any more rubbish, I will pass you over to Jessie, and then she can carry on. Thank you very much, Jessie.
Brilliant, thank you. I laughed when you said Snowdonia, because I was told to put that because it sounded better than saying Carnarvon. So.
All right. Just read up.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would just like to say that this is the first talk that I've done in 3 very long months. I've just got back to the university. I've actually been working in a car park over the summer in the test and trace site. So if I'm a bit rusty, bear with me. This is my first time speaking about things for a very long time. But I'm just going to share my screen now. There we are. Okie dokes. So I can talk about my academic influences and the theory side of it. However, I haven't incorporated it into this presentation. But at this time at the end, and you want to ask me questions about my artist influences, etc., specifically my research, I'm more than happy to answer questions on that. I just didn't want to, I didn't want to get too bogged down in that. So what I wanted to first of all talk about is how I use my photography as a tool for communication within my work in mental health. So obviously, as you know, I now lecture, but for the past 5-6 years, I've been working in the mental health sector, either as a photographer for communications and media or facilitating workshops. And whilst I was studying my master's, I was a mental health support worker for working with people in the homeless pathway. So people that have come through being sectioned, so from hospitals or literally people off the streets. We were the first point of call they came to if they had drug and alcohol issues and or mental health and were homeless, so complex needs. So the first section, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I use photography in my mental health work. And then the second section, I will just talk about the biggest piece of work I suppose I've done around these ideas of loneliness and belonging, which is called the polymorph. So here we go. So when I worked in mental health, we have to obviously deal with really, really big issues. And we had this really small room, which was about 1 metre long. So it wouldn't do very well for sitting in right now with the social distance constraints. And, you'd have these clients coming to you with really, really big issues, big aspirations. And you as a stranger are asking them to sit down and for them to just delve into their issues with you, which is actually a really confrontational situation to be in for a lot of people. So quite naturally, I had my camera on me all the time, and this camera just came into my mental health practice. It became this object that I could share with clients. So instead of being on opposite sides to a client, and there's this boundary between me and him or me and her, we were suddenly looking at this object together. We're looking at the same screen, we're looking at the same image, we're focusing on the same thing together. And the photography basically in the camera was a beautiful way for me to break down these power dynamics that we have to work within the mental health sector. So not only just photographer and sitter, but I'm thinking of mental health service and user, support worker and client. So it was a really beautiful process to kind of break down these power dynamics and really build up our communication and our relationship with one another. So this also is a really important part of the nurse's therapeutic relationship with a service user, which is this caring relationship develops when you and your patient come together in the moment, which results in harmony and healing. So this participatory work that I do is really, really simple. It's really quick. It's really literal. It's don't have to write massive essays about it. It's just what we're feeling at the time. And photography is this amazing thing where you can create this tangibleness and this touchability. And it can really help us and service users to root ourselves back to where we are and bring ourselves back to the present and really be aware of our surroundings and where we want to be. And as you probably all know, an image, it isn't worth 1,000 words. An image is this reference point. It's not the whole picture. So we were able to use these reference points in our support sessions to help service users really visualize where they are and where they want to be. So using these images a bit like a map to help someone get through a certain journey. Can I also say as well, I really like it when people ask me questions instead of me just talking constantly. So if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, please ask them. Please button. So I would just basically print out these photographs on the local office printer and give them to the service users. And I would be really quite touched by what they would do with these photographs. I mean, can anyone just having a look at these pictures, can anyone tell me what they see when they look at these images? Can anyone hear me? Yeah? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
No, I would just like if anyone would like to kind of just discuss or like kind of mention. So these are the original photographs, and these are what the type of things that the clients would do with the photographs afterwards.
So they're interacting and painting over the images, are they, that you printed?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, for me, what I really noticed was the environment. So Kevin, this is where he lives. This is his room.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to really discuss why there's big holes in the wall, but it's not a very nice situation. Oh, sorry. That's my WhatsApp. So this is his environment, and then I give him these photographs, and this is where he takes himself. So Kevin doesn't get out of this complex very much. He goes to the corner shop to get his bits and bobs. When I used to talk to him about his situation, it was always fine. He didn't care where he was. He didn't care if he was homeless. He didn't care about this is what he said. He didn't care about his future. It was all quite negative. But then when he gives me these photographs back, and he's created these really beautiful environments covered in like natural landscapes, beautiful bold colours, you know, like quite dismal environment, and he's, you know, painting himself in yellow, it shows a lot about his insight and actually his perspective on his own situation, which we talk about. And this is, I suppose, the amazing thing about art. I mean, talking isn't for everyone. Talking isn't the one way of communicating. And having this holistic approach to understanding someone is really integral in mental health, and it's actually something that is kind of disappearing with the funding cuts, etc. This holistic approach to treating someone is disappearing, and instead it's being replaced with the key performance targets and having to just move people on constantly through the pathway as opposed to what's right for that person. So this work that I did with the service users was hugely impactful on my research in my own masters as well. And as I think it's Plato, he said, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year's worth of conversation. So my time working in the high complex needs site really taught me so much about, I mean, what photography is littered with: ideas of authorship, ideas of voice, power dynamics, identity, and our relationships with one another in society. So this statement is kind of like the baseline of all my work. I always ask myself this, which is, who is telling the story? Whose story is it to tell, and what for? Because how we perceive someone is consequently how we're going to value that person. It's all based on perceptions. It's all based on those constructions. That's all we've got. So this is just, I blurred out some of the people's identities because I'm not sure if they want me to share it. But this is just giving you a little bit of flavour of like the day-to-day simple activities I did with the work with the service users. Lots of portraits. So these are questions that I'm always asking myself, specifically in this past 2 years. Is my photography perpetuating the hegemonic ideologies, so the dominant ideologies of mental health? Can my photography be part of a discourse to break down stereotypes and stigma around mental health? And not just asking that question, but actually, how can I do that? How can I break down that stigma? And much of what I just showed you that past 10 minutes, how can I use photography as a tool to break down barriers and aid communication? And yeah, this is just a few concepts that kind of carry through my research. So hugely, the root of it is belonging, this idea of belonging, and, you know, this idea of home and safety. And I think now more than ever with the pandemic, that has really been highlighted again, the importance of having a home and having safety. Othering, imaginary, ideas of insider, outsider. So love Abigail Solomon Gadu. She's got a great essay called Insider, Outsider. And just ideas of the individual and that connection to community. So I'm really heavily inspired by Afrofuturism. And is everyone kind of familiar with the concept of Afrofuturism?
No. Could you explain that for me?
Yeah, that's fine. So Afrofuturism is it's a kind of array of art and music and literature specifically for the Black community. And it's kind of saying that you can't, to ask for equality in a system just built by the oppressor is never going to happen, because if you're the oppressed in a system built by the oppressor, you're never going to obtain true equality. So it's kind of this idea of seeing beyond the current systems, imagining the system that you want to live in, imagining the equality that you wish to see in the world. So, you know, I was so frustrated with how can I actually document these people? How can I document these marginalised communities that I may live within, but I'm not part of? How can I document them without actually making them a stereotype of their environment? Because that's essentially the trope that we all fall into, especially within documentary photography. And I'm heavily inspired by stories and literature. And I love this quote: "Stories allow us to understand and navigate a strange and alien world." So I think I kind of pushed myself out of my natural documentary kind of box and started to think, right, how can I explore these themes of loneliness, homelessness, belonging, without perpetuating these issues? So I used a spaceman creature. So the polymorph is the title of the work, and within this story sits two creatures, the sibling and the symbol. And it's kind of exploring this idea of the othering process. And is everyone kind of familiar with the othering process, or should I scoot over that?
Yeah, if you can scoot over that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the other is you have the dominant ideology, you have the dominant society, and then, so for instance, a really good example of that is the white male is the kind of dominant character within our society, and the other to that will maybe the Black female, you know, or the disabled female. So it's kind of, the other is the subservient within society. So it's playing with these power dynamics, and in order for the dominant ideology to carry on being powerful, a way of doing that is othering other people. So by othering other people, you're therefore kind of dehumanizing them and justifying the way that we treat certain characters within our society. So I was playing with this idea of like the other and the other half, and I utilised this spaceman symbol because obviously spacemen, they symbolise humanity at its utmost best. When we come together, you know, we search for what is beyond and above and in front of us and our future for the better of humanity. So I kind of use this kind of otherworldly symbol and I bring it back down to earth. So I make a really terrible shoddy outfit. I make a really shoddy faceless helmet. So it's like just playing with this idea of power and what we perceive to be powerful and strong. And actually, when you come close enough, it's all a bit of a sham. All these power constructs that we live within is all just an illusion. And actually, if we just kind of prodded it a little bit, we'd see that it would come crumbling down quite quickly. And I think actually this year is a great, you know, like Black Lives Matter here in Bristol, like the power of people coming together. It was a great example of this, like just prod it and you'll see it fall, you know? So, yeah, most of my work actually has always been, even if it's not very explicit in the work, it's very political. I think I am very political as a person, and it does kind of come through in my research and my thinking and my talking. So this is kind of the development work. I would go out on the streets where I live and photograph this creature. And I suppose the background of this was I now live in Bristol in St. Paul's, which is, you know, quite infamous community. It was a Black community, quite poor. And then suddenly it's, you know, it's been gentrified. The whole place has been knocked down for like all these fancy flats to arrive. You know, I live opposite the homeless shelter. And then whilst I was making this work, I was going to London to do my master's. I had these 2 amazing days where I was just totally privileged to be submerged in my art world. But again, it was an elephant and castle where whole communities are just being bulldozed over for high-rise flats, gentrified flats. So I was living in this really strange, I still do, live in this very strange environment of just contrast between wealth and economy and opportunity. So I wanted... Hello?
Film.
Pardon?
What are you shooting in?
What am I shooting in? Digital. Everyone thinks it's film, but it's a Fuji camera.
Oh,
I always laugh at that. That question, but because everyone always thinks that it's film, but it's a Fuji camera. I've got an X-T10 and an X Pro 2. Recommend them. So these are the photographs that I was making, the types of photographs, and I utilised lots of different people within this same outfit. And I suppose coming back to that idea of Afrofuturism, I wanted my work to not just explore the present day situation, but to also ask questions of what if, other alternatives. I love Neil Gaiman. Has anyone else read Neil Gaiman?
Yes, yeah.
Love him. He is also really heavily influenced by Jean Baudrillard, who is a big part of my research. I haven't put him in here, but if you like The Matrix, you'll like Jean Baudrillard.
Yeah.
And it's just, what influences my work is this idea that reality may just be, sounds a bit trippy now, reality may just be an illusion. Reality is the constructs that we create. And actually that isn't scary, that's actually quite powerful, because if our reality is what we create, we can make a better reality for ourselves going forward. So in American Gods, there's a great quote that says, "This isn't about what is, it's about what people think is. It's all imaginary anyway, and that's why it's important. People only fight over imaginary things." So this idea of the imaginary, how we create our value and value system and how we value each other is literally based on these constructed identities of the individual. And this is the thing that really got me, because when I would walk down the street with one of my clients who might be a bit grubby and might look a certain way, I would literally have people cross the road away from us. I'd have families cross the road to avoid us, which was heartbreaking for me to work with. But then when I used to walk down the road, and I did this, when I used to walk down the road with people in that outfit, I would have little kids coming up and wrapping their arms around that same person's legs. And, nothing has changed about the individual. The only thing that had changed was the external, so it's like really breaking down those ideas of how we look at each other. So looking past those environments and surface aesthetics, being able to see the person beneath the stereotypes that we hold. And another great guy, Franz Kafka, by believing passionately in something that still does not exist, we create it. And the non-existent is whatever we have not sufficiently desired. So this is just a few more development images, playing about different aesthetics. I just love the way the kids would really interact with this outfit as well, this creature. There's Kevin. So, what time is it? Oh, that's all right. Great, so this is, I'm just going to go through some of the final images of The Polymorph, which is a book, and then I'm going to read out an extract from some of my research. And then I can actually show you some of my new work, or I can can answer some questions first of all before I go on to my new work. So I'll just go through this. There we go. So as you can probably see, the actual end product is quite different to the actual process. And I really wanted to kind of just make it quite a universal story that can be accessible from all ages, all different types of people, and just really explore those ideas of loneliness, belonging, which is kind of the root of all these political issues that I was exploring through my photography.
Is that why you chose to move to black and white then, rather than stay in colour, or?
Yeah, to be honest, it was in colour all the way through, and then I think because it is quite melancholic, it is quite a sad. I mean, like this year that I made this work, I mean, like, not to get too sad, but I woke up one morning to a homeless guy who'd passed away on my street, and one of my clients had passed away. Someone else had passed away, so it was quite a. I was feeling like people were slipping away around me without any noise, without any voice, and I think the work is quite melancholic. So I think just the black and white probably just suited the mood, I suppose, of the work.
And then the same with the landscapes then, obviously, because you put them obviously in, I assume that they're around Bristol then, are they? Even though they look like a rural location, is that deliberate?
Yeah, so most of the work with the people it's in the city, but I actually I utilised, so it's an actual book, and there's lots of archive in the book as well. So I utilised a lot of my landscapes from North Wales as well, actually. So it's kind of really, the book is quite different. It really takes you on a journey through old archive, weird sci-fi images, landscapes, and then the urban as well. And it's, so yeah, just a big mix, actually, the end product.
So were these performed by clients that you were working with? Was that who was in the space, or did you get other performers to do it for you?
Yeah, I bullied my clients into doing it with me.
How was it for them? How did they feel about taking these roles on? Did it? I don't know.
Yeah, this is something actually. I go back to those images I can't remember at the beginning. Basically, they loved it. Some people don't like it, but actually, a lot of these clients that I work with don't have a support network. They don't have attention given to them unless it's in a professional manner and someone's getting paid to give them that attention. So they really love the process of being looked at and being recognised and being seen.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt for myself that, I mean, I've worked lots with people and their identities and their portraits, but I just felt with what I was trying to say, I couldn't use the face. The face became problematic. It became about that person as opposed to the issues I was exploring.
And is the book still for sale, or was a limited print edition?
Yeah, the book is for sale, and I'm still not happy with it though. I feel like I will never leave it alone, that book. But the book is, I've got a couple here. I have little small ones, like pamphlet ones, and then more kind of artist book styles as well. So
are they on the website to purchase then, or will it just be writing to you?
Yeah, it would just be emailing me, yeah. I will. Would you like me to read out a little extract from my writing?
I would definitely, yeah.
Okie dokes. So, the creatures that have come to walk by my side every day are visibly invisible. Through constructed masks, the viewer speculates and inquires further into the identity and states of these beings. Who are they? Who and what do they represent? Where do they belong? Throughout the development of this work, I have painted, layered, distorted the face, yet I felt compelled to create an absence in these creatures' identity. The lack of face highlights the visible absence of the person. I walk down the road with Kevin, a mental health client, and you look the other way. I walk down the road with this hallowed, round, broken helmet, and you smile at us with awe and curiosity. This broken, poorly constructed, costumed creature is a human you do not see. The faceless registering the other, yet hiding the human. Who is the nobody, the senseless character, staring back out at you? So that's just a little bit of text from my research. And I suppose I've written something here that I would like to probably end with about the polymorph, which is, so we need to realise the power each and every one of us has to create and define our own identities. And many people I work with have had very little control over the direction of their lives. And art can be a space for people to realise their potential, and the possibilities of their imagination become that reality. And I don't just want to point out the othering. I want to embrace the other. I want an utterly otherly narrative, far away from the dominant viewpoints, steeped in the colonial, conservative and patriarchal, and the institutional. The very act of creating alternative interpretations of belonging, mental health, the very idea of madness, gestures to the notion that we may have control over how images of identity are processed by society. And in a world of fixing abnormalities, key performance targets and move-ons, it's a rare place where we are allowed to just unquantifiably be. There we go. That's the end of my little polymorph talk. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I can answer any questions, then I can maybe show you a bit of my new work, which I haven't really shown anyone yet.
I got a question.
Go for it.
How did he feel about like difference of reaction?
Sorry, can you say that a bit louder?
How did he feel about the difference of reaction? Like, did he take in the way people were reacting when he was walking down as himself, and then like how?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not a conversation that I would directly have with him. It's like, oh, do you notice how people avoid you and now they don't? Because it's quite such a sensitive topic, isn't it? But yeah, you could see like anybody, if you are constantly ignored and in life, and then suddenly people are looking at you, it's a wonderful feeling. And I suppose this is the thing, and this is what I'm interested in, is these little cracks where people fall in between. But no, they loved it. A lot of the people that I wouldn't go seeking out people for these projects. It'll be people that want to be part of these projects, and they just love the attention, I suppose, from it as well, which is great.
How long were you working with them before you kind of got them involved in the?
Well, I've kind of known some of them for like 5 years. Some people 2 weeks.
Oh, right.
So it would just depend on the individual, I suppose. Yeah, I definitely, I mean, that is a big thing for me, and that's why I started with a little bit of like how my work is in the community, because it's not just about the end goal, it's not just about the artwork for me, it's the process and the method, and the creating is just as important for me as the end goal. So those relationships are really important and fun.
Could you like start to make a sort of therapeutic method out of this? Could you sort of like project it forward into like something you could pass on to other people to use as a way of working with people?
Yeah, it's art therapy, isn't it? Like, I'm always really careful to say like I'm not a qualified art therapist, but I suppose this is my thinkings about going forward. I'm really passionate about accessibility to education and opportunities for all, and I do think that this kind of experience that I've already had will definitely filter into whatever I do in the future. I just think like services need more money. Like we need to be, they need more funding to actually offer these projects for people.
Yeah, we found that we do a lot of workshops within Elysium and obviously within the gallery, and I think the social prescribing seems to be coming through quite a lot then. So the pushing, obviously, different people into arts institutions and different organisations as a way of helping them then, but maybe obviously as a way of saving money and trying to move people out of certain situations so they can.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, I'm also really, as a lecturer as well, and someone that's been a student, I'm really interested in like how should we go forward with universities and arts education? Like, I'm a big believer in education, but I don't see the point in everybody going to university and then what's next. It's about the wider picture as well, isn't it? Past education and past the university. But yeah, definitely people get moved on a bit too quickly for not the right reasons as well.
So what would you like to instill in your students then when they, I mean, is there anything that you would want to, I mean, apart from being human and empathetic, I mean, would you want to, I mean, would that be an interesting conversation to have with documentary photographers where these people just go in and have that kind of observation and just watch people and then don't engage? And then, I've always had a difficulty with documentary from that point of view.
Definitely.
Would you push them more to be, involved in the community that they photograph? And, should white people be photographing white issues and white problems rather than going to different countries and photographing third world problems? Should that be?
This is so because I think I talk a lot about this ethics and that idea of inside outsiderness. I am still a big advocate of, art and photography is a way from somebody from one community to go and learn about another community. So I think if you're a man, if you want to photograph women, go for it. If you're black and you want to photograph a white community or vice versa, go for it. Just because we are, we're not even different, are we? It's just again, that's to say, it's the external differences, isn't it? But what I do tell my students, a big part is the ethics. It's like, you ask yourself, why are you taking these photographs? What is the consequence? And how is it going to affect those people that you photographed? We live by the image today. It's not about the action anymore. It's about the representation. It's about how we are perceived in social media, in the news, on the internet. So when you are going out and taking that photograph, think about how it's going to be contextualized in society, where it's going to sit in society. So yeah, definitely think, no, we should still be photographing and learning about each other from different spaces and places and languages and cultures. Just do it respectfully and ethically. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Any other business? Any other questions? Or should I go on to my other work, like for 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
It's all gone quiet, has it? Yeah.
Good to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, fab. Okay, so that is kind of the work that I know and love. And so during lockdown, I created this new work. And just a bit of a background, when I was traveling last year, I looked down. I was literally in Vietnam, and I looked down and there was this roll of film. And I was like, can't believe my luck here. This is going to be amazing. And I'm really inspired by Hita Sterol. Has anyone heard of Hita Sterol?
No.
She is an amazing writer of like all things image based, and she has a great book called The Wretched of the Screen, and it's just really inspiring for me. I'm really, really fascinated at the moment. Again, it's with the idea of the individual, but it's how this idea of immortality. So I'm going to be a bit more confuddled when I talk about this because it is brand new, but it's kind of that how the image has kind of replaced religion. So we would be part of a religion, be part of that kind of tradition, and that kind of would save our souls for immortality. So no matter what pain and suffering we have on this world, we will then live in immortality and, in paradise or whatever it is. So I feel like now the image has almost replaced religion. And it's like, no matter what's going on in our lives or what's going on in reality, it's okay, because in our image, this is who we are. This is how we are portrayed to the world. And this is the way we want to be enshrined and immortalized as this perfect, pixel perfect image on Instagram. So that's kind of where this work's coming from. And when I scanned this work, I found that it was just a massive roll of dancers. So you had someone photographing the dancers, and then on the walls there was literally pictures of the dancers. So there's this repetition of being looked at, being looked at, being looked at. And that was kind of like this weird cyclical kind of like, that was it. We're just looking. And it's that kind of, I'm really interested right now in this question of, are we existing if we're not being looked at, if we're not being seen? If that makes sense to anyone. Does this make sense? Like literally, this is just off the cusp at the moment, guys. So is this making sense to everybody?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, cool, great. Yeah, and I think it's something that a lot of us can relate to as well, I suppose, isn't it? And especially younger people, and the way that we communicate and connect with one another. So basically, I've done a bit of writing. And I'll just take you through it, really. I've kind of talked about it enough. Right, so I have written some kind of like quite abstract thinking, some processes in response to this idea of the image as almost like a coffin, like something you prize from the earth. I'm really inspired by like folklore and myth, and I've kind of used my like inspiration from like Gollum creating the human figure out of clay. It's almost like we're creating human figures out of pixels and screens and images. It's not quite a human, a bit like a Frankenstein. And it'd be great to get some of your opinions on how I could take this work forward. So, yeah, and I was just kind of thinking about this idea that we never really have any peace, do we? Like, we're always switched on, we're always being watched by some screen or other, and always being resurrected and never fully off. And I suppose, like I said, so interested in myth, Gollum, also this idea of like, you know, mutating, cells mutating is how we, you know, that's how we are human, because cells mutated and evolved, but also cells mutating is also how we create cancer. So it's this kind of like balance of where do we stop with this amazing technology that we're now living within. Yeah.
Hi, Jessie. I have a question.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. Yeah, it's probably not. I'm not offering you any help, but I'm just wondering. Have you worked with found images before, and how does it feel? If not, how does it feel? Kind of working with found images as opposed to taking your own.
Yeah, I think it's a big step in my practice, and I think that's the whole point of this work. It's this idea that we take an image, and then it's like we take the process of that image is ours, but then as soon as we kind of like sacrifice it, you know, there we are, we literally sacrifice it to this like cloud, to this ethereal space of the internet, and it suddenly isn't our own anymore. It kind of just exists then, multiplying and existing wherever it wishes to go. So I think using the archive and that whole process, the whole act of finding this roll of film in a literally alien country to me, I have no idea who these people are. I have no idea of the identity of them or the purpose of these images, but they exist and they're there. And I think that kind of really plays with this whole idea of where I'm going with this project, I think. I hope I answered your question, Rachel.
You did, yes.
Thank you.
I guess I'm thinking, since photographs began to exist, that has sort of been a thing anyway, isn't it? Like, photographs do exist longer than people live, I guess. So the idea of like the photograph kind of being in existence for anyone to see has kind of applied since, but I guess it's just more prolific now, isn't it? Now there are more images everywhere.
Well, there's just more power, isn't there? There's more power in the image today. There's just more of them. Like when I was working in the test and trace site, it was really funny because the manager wouldn't say, please social distance because this is the policy and this is what's going to protect you. it was please social distance in case you are photographed. You know, it's all this kind of like, even our language around how we behave with each other is changing based on the image. You know, I think, I don't know whether it's because we are all in the photography community, but I'm interested to see whether everybody is aware of how much the image is dominating our lives and how much power the image has over our behaviour. I don't know if we are aware of that as a society yet. Yeah.
You think there's a generational difference in some of this? I think someone, my slightly more advanced years, probably maybe doesn't feel it yet as much as someone in their teens or 20s.
Yeah,
myself, I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, do you know what, Tony? When I talked with first years last year about, I showed them the documentary Jeremy Deller's Everybody in the Place, and it was talking about politics through house music. And Jeremy Deller asked this question to this group of 18-year-olds and said, would you rather be young today or young in the 90s? And my students said the same reply as the people in the programme, which was, I'd rather be young in the 90s. They said, I don't feel like I can explore or experiment because I feel like I'm always watched. So I thought it was quite sad that an 18-year-old would rather be young 20 years ago than today, because they don't feel like they can actually be a young person as they want to be.
I can like vouch for that. It's like being, you know, I'm like in my 20s and stuff now. It's not the fact about being watched. It's that you can go online and you can see people who have done what they want, and you can see what people say about it. So then and it's quite bad. Like online, if you see people who do something they want, they normally get like judged for it. And because it's online, people don't have a barrier of what they can say. So yeah, definitely. And that brings up other ideas, which I think I've been discussing a lot with people recently, about we are so quick to judge someone on what they say immediately, and we don't leave any room for mistakes or conversation sometimes. And in order for us to grow and change as a society, we need to accept that we will all be making mistakes. We all make mistakes. That's how we learn. But I feel like the internet is this place where once you have said something, it's enshrined. It's there. That's it. You know, it's quite a hard place, especially to be a young person, I think. Yeah.
But I think it's not that safe space. I mean, you talked about safe spaces before and home and stuff like that. And I don't think now the internet, and especially, social network in particular, is a safe space to express yourself, because you will get shot down by, if you were in a small group or a classroom or whatever, then you can not control the room, but obviously you can have a conversation with those people. But when that feels like a safe space, maybe it's because they're your peers or because they have the same interests as you. But when it goes onto social network, then obviously you can be bombarded from all over the world. So it isn't safe. So maybe, you know, you've got that heightened anxiety of people now, and younger people then, because they're constantly, again, like Luke said, being watched or being criticised or being forced to be something, and I suppose you can stay off then, and then you stay off then, and then you have the problem of not existing because you're no longer seen on a social network. And
I mean, that people do choose to make themselves very. I mean, again, I'm talking about someone from a slightly different age perspective here, but people seem to choose to make themselves very visible, and I don't feel I have to do that. I suppose it's mine, but obviously, there's something very compelling to put yourself in a public space like that. But I don't know. It's an interesting question.
It's just, I mean, like, you know, when I'm teaching the students about, you know, getting yourself out there and work experience, it's not even question. Like you get a website, you get social media, that, because it's just, it's expected, and that's what you have to do nowadays. You have to perform. You have to be on the stage constantly in order to do your work. And that, coming back to that idea of like just community, you know, how big is our community in real life? You know, it's relatively small compared to the community we have to connect to on the internet. And I think 20 years ago, if you said, oh, we've got this amazing space where everyone can connect and we can learn about everything that ever was, you'd be like, wow, that's going to be amazing. But actually, what we're finding is that people are becoming more extreme, more polarized, overwhelmed. So I don't want to put a downer on the internet. I'm just saying that we need to think about how we use it and how we use it as a tool in society, I suppose. For things like this. Well, I think I will stop talking. If no one's got questions, I will. That's me done. Has anyone got any other questions they'd like to ask me? Or
do you see a link between this work and your what you did before, the sort of therapeutic type? I know it's not quite therapy, you said, but that area of practice that you've done before. Do you feel there's a link between this and that work?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely all about like this idea of visibility and the individual. And again, it's all about kind of the contextualizing the individual within that space. I think this is just, I found it a little bit harder to talk about this. One, because I've got some text there, which I find hard to share with people. And I think it's quite nice for me to say that as a lecturer, like I've still got barriers that we have to work through. And I think this is a bit more internal. So I've always been working with other people, with other participants, whereas the lockdown made me really think about the idea of me and my relationship to this.
Do you think this project would have been different if you'd have found a memory card, an SD card on the floor, rather than a roller film that needed to be developed?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's something about finding that scratched, dirty film, and that the whole idea of that being an object really inspired my thinkings of like funeral, death, coffin, enshrinement. It really made that definitely would have been a different response if it was a memory card, for sure.
Yeah, because then obviously with that digital would have been brought in all those elements of being a throwaway, being a reproduction, and they would have brought all those things back, really, which is the digital age does, doesn't it? Rather than
yeah.
Do the people feel more real because they're on a piece of silver and gelatin rather than a?
Yeah, it's really, it's really weird. I mean, I've edited these photographs so like they haven't got a face, and I've really highlighted all the textures and the scratches that have come out. Because, you kind of look at them and you think, well, do these people still exist? Are they alive? Who are they? Yeah. What do they do? I'm creating these like little stories about these characters on this tiny strip of film, Yeah.
I think that adds to it, with it being an analogue, it gives it that illusion of, that history and that illusion of history and age, and that these are people that could no longer be here, even though they might have been taken yesterday, Yeah,
definitely. I love the aesthetic of them at the moment. I'm hopefully when I get back into the universities, might start playing with them in the dev rooms and whatnot. So
have you started playing with the idea of, you've been playing with the idea of the negative and the positive then? I noticed you got, and colour as well. Was there a colour one in there?
Yeah, I've just been playing around with this like kind of hyper polarization, like purples, because I suppose the way that I've been writing is this influence of, like, as I said, the myths and the like legends of immortality, but then also this kind of quite scientific, I'm not very sciencey at all, but just thinking about mutations and cells dividing in the same way that pixels divide and fragment. So I think my colours are probably influenced by that thinking. So that's why I've got this quite sciencey sci-fi colours.
Yeah.
But I always come back. Can be as conceptual as I like. I just love black and white, basically. I love the aesthetic of black and white. That's why I always come back to it. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, it's amazing. I don't think, I think I shut up in my questions. If anyone's got anything else to ask Jessie while we have her here. No, are we all quite happy with that?
Well, thank you for listening to me, everybody, this evening. And as I said, it was the first time for me for a while. So thank you very much for giving me the time.
Thanks, Jessie. It's been great.